What's Labour's view in all of this?
Well, this news will obviously cause a huge amount of concern to many households, many businesses as well. Of course, lots of families already had their backs against the wall, and now they're going to be seeing, in many cases, their mortgage costs really going through the roof. And this hasn't come about by accident. It hasn't been an act of God. We have had 12 years of low growth, low productivity, low investment, no plan to set that right from the Conservatives now. And ultimately, you're seeing working people and businesses paying the price for that Conservative failure.
Anneliese Dodds, interest rates are rising all around the world. The Fed yesterday put them up by 0.75% for the fourth month in a row. This isn't peculiar just to Great Britain, is it?
But the nature of the crisis is worse in our country than in many other nations. That is peculiar, I'm afraid, to Conservative-led governments. We've been put in a worse position. Our economy is weaker than many other nations. And as I said, that hasn't come about by accident. It hasn't been an act of God. We haven't had a plan for growth in this country over the last 12 years. If we'd seen the same levels of growth under the Conservatives as we saw under Labour, we would not be in this situation, and the Bank of England wouldn't be put in this situation. I mean, Labour's calling for that plan for growth to be put in place immediately. We need to be right now backing the jobs of the future that we need to see up and down our country in the technologies of the future. We've set out how to achieve that with our Green Prosperity Plan. We're not seeing anything like that, I'm afraid, from the Conservatives. Just the same old tired policies, no change, and ultimately working families are paying the price.
Well, the same old tired policies. There's lots of being reported that Rishi Sunak's eyeing up a windfall tax on the energy companies, something that the Labour Party presumably would support.
Well, he really needs to get a move on and put that windfall tax in place because, of course, his government, the Conservative government, chose to borrow more when they had an alternative. They had that alternative to use some of those enormous profits, bumper profits, as they were described earlier in the week, to use some of that money to get costs down for families. They chose instead not to adopt the kind of windfall tax that Labour called for, proper watertight windfall tax. They chose to borrow instead. And we've seen the impact of that on our economy and the impact on economic stability, which of course has been so negative.
Can I ask you, in the mini-budget, one of the proposals was to cut the basic rate of income tax by 1% next year. The Labour Party agreed with that. That was then dropped by Jeremy Hunt. Does the Labour Party still agree that tax rate should be cut next year?
So we, of course, will assess any plans that come forward from government, and our priority on tax has always been to reduce the burden on working people and to ultimately seek, where we need to have additional taxation, that taxation from those with the broadest shoulders. You know, why are we, for example, still giving non-DOMs a different tax treatment to people who've lived here all of their lives? This really is a strange position to be in. We'll assess any tax proposals very carefully. And before the election, if I may, I was just going to say, if we're approaching a general election at that time, as we hope we will be, we need a general election, we will set out our spending plans and exactly how we will pay for them at that stage.
But
we can't do so now. I can't write the manifesto now.
But you were absolutely clear 2 weeks ago you were going to support that 1p cut in income tax rate. You don't appear to be so clear about it now. What's changed?
Well, we'll set out our tax plans for the next general election at the time of the next general election, and we want that general election to happen as soon as possible. At that stage, you'll see our spending and our tax plan.
So sitting on the fence on that one. Look, we're almost out of time, but on the non-DOMs point, I just want to point to what happened when François Hollande came to power in France. He went after the non-DOMs, and what happened? They all up sticks and moved over here. We benefited from that. Do we really want to send them back overseas? Because they are wealth creators. They don't just have a personal independent wealth. They spend that money here, they generate, they employ people.
Well, that hasn't been our experience in Britain. Actually, when we've seen changes to the tax treatment of the very wealthiest, that hasn't led to the kind of exodus that you suggest might have taken place elsewhere. I'm very proud of our country's economy. I think people come here because they see the incredible potential for innovation, our amazing universities, the incredible workforce that we have here. Not a lazy workforce, as some Conservatives have described it, but ultimately a very, very productive workforce. I think that's why people want to come here, who want to create wealth. I don't think it's because they might end up paying less tax, and that needs to be changed.